At MarketPro, as we're sending candidates in for our marketing executive searches, be they marketing candidates, digital, e-commerce, innovation, whatever the case may be, and they go in an interview with our clients, we're seeing the majority of our clients do behavioral-based interviews. And behavior-based interviews have been around for a long time. Best we can tell, they started somewhere in the 70s, but organizations are getting better and more sophisticated about how to utilize them. So what are behavior-based interviews? Behavior-based interviews basically says the organization understands what success looks like for this role. They understand what types of behaviors will relate to that success. And now they're going to ask you questions about how your past behavior will validate their decision on hiring you. So as you get into behavior interviews, you're going to know you're getting asked a behavior interview question if someone says, tell me about a time when, or give me a specific example of. Those are clear giveaways that this is now a behavioral-based interview. So it could be, give me an example of a time when you had to communicate and get a point across to a difficult team. Or give me an example of a time where you had to manage multiple priorities, multiple conflicting priorities. And those are definitely questions you will get, and you'll get questions like that for motivation, like that for leadership, like that for cross-functional communication. And they're all very important for you to understand how to answer. More importantly, you're going to get questions that are specific to the type of role that you're going in for. So if it's a brand management role, you may get a question that says, give me an example of a time when you took over a brand that wasn't doing well and how you turned it around. Or if it's a digital marketing role, tell me about a time when you went into an organization where digital was fundamentally broken and how you fixed it. Those are the type of questions that you will be getting as you go into a behavior-based interview. So as you're answering the behavior-based question, right, you want to make sure that the interviewer, be it the hiring manager, the HR person, a peer, or whoever you're interviewing with, understands the situation that you're talking about. So you're answering the question, you're sharing a specific situation, so you want to give an overview of that situation and the challenge you were facing at the time. Then you want to share how you broke down the problem. What were the things that you did logically to solve the problem, and what was your strategy for approaching it? And then what did you do tactically? What did you do to execute against that solution? And most importantly, what were the results that you drove for the organization you were working with? And how is the organization better off because you implemented that solution? One other thing that's really important about answering behavioral-based questions is that you give a clear and complete answer, but that you don't spend the entire interview answering one question. So you want to make sure that your answer is clear, but it's also concise enough that it gives the interviewer the opportunity to ask more questions. Then the question is, the most important way I think we can help you is, how do you prepare for a behavioral-based interview, right? And there's actually a lot of bad advice out there as to how you do this. The most important thing you've got to be able to do is know yourself. And so there's a whole nother video we've done on how to prepare for interviews that talks about going through your background and pulling out your key wins, your key successes, so I won't repeat that here. But once you've gone through and done that, then go through and do some research on the organization and some research on the position specifically, and come up with some sample behavior-based interview questions you think they might ask you, and come up with answers that are based on your background, your experience, and your key wins, so that you get comfortable answering those kind of questions. And one of the things to be careful of and make sure that you don't do is answer a behavior-based question and start down the path of answering the question when you don't really have a solid example to back that up. So you want to make sure that every question you answer that's behavioral based comes with a real world example of your success and something that you've accomplished. One of the other things that will come up in behavioral based interviews is they want to understand how you deal with failure and how you've overcome situations where you haven't been successful in the past. So you might be asked a question like, give me an example of a time where you failed. Give me an example of a time where you were not successful. Tell me about a time when you had constraints that kept you from moving forward. In each of those questions, the answer is not to say, I've never failed, because most people in this case won't believe you. What they want to know is that you have learned from times where you weren't successful, and that therefore you won't repeat those mistakes again. One of the interesting things about behavioral-based interviews is we're seeing them more and more. So I would pretty much be prepared for a behavioral-based interview. Any interview you walk into now that's senior manager, director, VP, and above level search.